and welcome to this Christian Walk podcast, the show where no topic is too taboo to empower you on your walk with God. I'm your host, Marley B, and it's my privilege to welcome you back to season 6. And today, TCW fam, I want to share a special moment with you. Recently, my family gathered to celebrate 100 years of life for my grandmother. I'm actually doubly blessed because while my maternal grandmother turned 100, my paternal grandmother recently turned 90. And thinking about the lives that they led, the generations that they represent, it made me realize that in the world that we're living in right now, there's like 7 generations that are living together, shopping together, working together, and going to church together. Today, my guest is Brandi Williams. Brandi has answered the call to be a voice of the younger generation when it comes to integrating the church. Because young people want to know that their voice matters when it comes to how they worship, where they worship, and what it looks like in that worship experience. And Brandi is helping all kinds of people in all kinds of churches to integrate the newer generations in. She's doing a brilliant work. She's a brilliant lady, and we had a great conversation. So let's get into it right now.
Uh, we ain't talked in a minute, yo, please come kick it with me. I got some questions, need answers, so please be vivid with me. This walk is scary, I know that results may vary, but somebody gotta do it. Sit down, let's get into it.
Brandi Williams, welcome to this Christian Walk podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a privilege and an honor. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I am so honored to have you here. And boy, I can't wait to have this conversation because it's so relevant and it's something that in the church we don't consider enough. But before we get into it, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself to the TCW fam. So go ahead and take it away.
All right. Well, what's up, TCW fam? My name is Brandi Nicole Williams, born on the south side of Chicago. I am the director for the African American Church Evangelism Institute at the Wheaton College Billy Graham Center in Wheaton, Illinois. Aside from that, I like to describe myself as just a girl that goes with God. Like, well, okay, God, what we doing? That's kind of a lot of times what someone may hear me say. I do. Aside from my role as director, I do have a business called Be the Light Enterprises, where I do consulting with individuals who are looking to launch ministry and marketplace endeavors. I do some church consulting at times. I'm also an author and a minister. So that's just kind of the nuts and bolts of who Brandi Nicole is.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, I love that you have built your ministry with a foundation of evangelism. And that's usually a big word that can be a little bit intimidating to people as far as evangelism. But when you think about it, it's like, oh, this is a big Harvard-sized word. But when it boils down to it, it's being able to defend our faith. What I've been pretty much finding as I've been growing and learning more in my biblical studies, being apologetics, evangelism, all of that stuff is just being able to defend your faith, explain your faith, and present your faith. But I would like to know your definition of evangelism.
Yeah, so for me, and I view this even in the work that we do with the Institute, as I really view evangelism as something that is embodied. And that just simply means how we live it out, because I think that is more practical. I think it's more relevant to individuals in our lives who may not know all the information or have preconceptions, but they're able to be guiding because of how you live your life. And so I would say that if I think about like the church of old, right? they use the language of like evangelize the lost at any cost, or you have the savings campaigns and all those things, like get them saved, things like that. And I would rather use language traits that to evangelize is to be a bridge to Christ. And so then, whether it's through your daily walk, or if we're talking about practices of the church, being able to be interested and curious and present enough to have an understanding of what's going on in people's lives, what needs they have, what their pain points are, and in order for you to be an on-ramp in order to introduce them to Christ, not so much to begin by trying to pump them with particular doctrine or whatever the case may be, because that's where the Holy Spirit does the work, the Word does His work. And I think if anyone would think about their own experience with Christ, that's not at all what it is or how it begins. It begins with the work of the Spirit in your heart and in your mind, and all that other stuff comes later.
Awesome. I love the way that you articulated that. It's like, it's not so much what you're projecting, but it's what you're embodying. And the Holy Spirit will give us those opportunities to share our faith. And I think that's a beautiful way to look at it, and a practical way to look at it, because sometimes it can feel like an intimidating thing, because we've all been seeing like the decline, and you want to be, or you just see the need. We're living in a world where faith is hope. Right. And people need it everywhere that we look, and we're not really sure the best way of opening that door, because it can be such a taboo subject, unfortunately. And I think that what people need to realize is not about just kicking those opportunities down. It's just making sure that we walk it ourselves. And then that is what opens the door. So that's a beautiful philosophy that you live by, and that's a great way to explain it. Thank you for that. So like you said before, you're a writer, speaker, entrepreneur, leadership coach, a generational expert, right? And the director of the Evangelism Institute, right? So you with all of those things, right? And I just have to say, I just want to say this as a side note. I love that with all your education and all of your skills, that you're doing it for the kingdom. A lot of times people will get all of this education and stuff like that and take it to the world, because they think that, that's where it'll be. They get the best bang for their buck, pretty much. That's what they think the money and the opportunities will be. But I thank you for finding the advantages of investing in bringing your skills to the kingdom and investing into the kingdom. That is a beautiful thing, and it inspires me. So thank you for being you. You are welcome.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't say that I'm a PhD student. So so I pray to be done with my dissertation within the next year. And so yeah, but even with that, a lot of people have aspirations to pursue doctoral degrees. Let me rest the case. Was never an aspiration of mine, was a God nudge. And so my pursuing this advanced education has been an act of obedience, to say like, okay, God, like, what do you want me to do with this? This was never my idea. Like, I was straight. I wasn't looking for no more debt, like, all that kind of stuff. And so even with that, I have a huge burden for seeing churches and faith-based businesses in particularly run efficiently and effectively. I think all too often, so my PhD is in organizational leadership. So all too often, I feel like the church is behind the curve on what it looks like to run things with excellence. Yes. I think sometimes we can almost use Jesus as a scapegoat, if you will, like, because we got Jesus, it's gonna be all right. It's like, right. Okay, well, we got skills and expertise too, and we need to do something with it to to reflect excellence because we rep the kingdom.
Yes. Yes.
No
We
way
can't
that the
just keep
world should
sprinkling
ever.
the blood on mess. We gotta do we gotta
That
can't
is
just sprinkle it.
absolutely correct,
Yeah,
right?
I
Like,
get that.
and so it's just like all too often in the natural sense, it's like the world, we should never be in a position where the world is like one up on us. It should just never be.
Yes, you well said, well said. And you know what? Too often we done been in some stuff where, I mean, you almost feel like, I remember a time where you almost knew church wasn't gonna start on time, or just stuff wasn't gonna start on time, or it was just gonna be all day, not efficient. So somebody don't know how to shut down the testimony time frame. It could be just small as that. And
Yeah.
it's just
It's
like,
like, I
okay.
got plans. What we doing?
Right. Can we get some order around here? Like, I know
Yeah.
that sometimes a shift happen in the spirit, and that's fine, but do it gotta take 3 hours?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do it to take 4 hours all day and all of that.
Yeah.
So that is so true. That is so true. Now, just to kind of touch on your expertise with the generations. I mean,
Mhm.
because whether a lot of people realize it or not, we're living in a time where 7 different generations are working together, living together, and definitely going to church together, right? We know if nowhere else, even if they all 7 not in the workplace, they're definitely in the kingdom, right? And we don't really take a lot of time to really consider all of those nuances, all students together, and what the advantages are and the perils. We just kind of ignore it altogether. But you have made it a
Yeah.
part of your ministry to pretty much help leadership in church when it comes to understanding other generations. And I wanted to kind of talk about that because we're living in a country where 59% of the churches in the United States are plateauing or declining. Do you have a theory as to why that is, especially at a time where, like we were saying before, you would think people will be clinging more to faith, but it seems like people are just walking away. Do you have a general theory about that?
Well, I think, and so to bring clarity too, so in terms of like the research that's associated with our institute, we have focused on young adults specifically.
Okay.
So millennials, but primarily some millennials fall into the young adult category. So technically I'm a millennial, but I'll be 41 in a month. So I'm not the person that you're talking to, right?
Right.
Like, right. Like in terms of like, a lot of times people be like, oh, the millennials. It's like, no, millennials are not all young people are not millennials. The oldest millennial is 42, right? The
Right. Right.
youngest is 27. So that's not
Mm-hmm.
who you're talking about when you're talking about the current generation. You're talking about uh Gen Z, who is born 96 to 2012. Okay, so that's that. So I'd say that when you consider the world in which they live in, right, and you'll have every generation to say that their world is different, and and
Yeah.
it's true, right? Everything's progressed, technology has progressed, the world has progressed, right? Right, the baby
Mm-hmm.
boomers had McDonald's. McDonald's wasn't a thing for the silent generation. So, every generation is going to have something. But when you think about the world that this generation lives in, the amount of things that they get exposed to as a result of technology, when you think about school shootings, when you think about the way in which, and probably only studies will show years down the line, the ways in which COVID impacted the development of those within this generation. When you consider all those things, did I say gun shootings? I don't know if I said
Yeah,
gun
you
shootings.
did.
Yeah,
You
you think
did.
about student loan debt, right? I think millennial, we probably have the most, right? Like
Yes.
student loan debt. And so you think about what that means in terms of being able to start a life, right? We have more education than we've ever had in economic progress and professional progress, and maybe all the things that our grandparents, my grandma's 87 years old. I have one living grandparent. So it's just
Mhm.
like I am aware that my life is probably something that she only prayed or hoped for, in comparison to what her own life has been. But when you think about all those things and the different factors, and then you think about the church today that primarily is still who is still primarily composed of baby boomers, which means that the flow and the nature of the service and how things are communicated, right, are still catering to that demographic. But what's being done to bridge the gap between this generation and the ones that follow? So really at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, what types of conversations are we having? Are we trying to understand the world, the difference in the worlds in which each generation exists? We have to ask ourselves that. And, there's this posture that tends to say that we know best, right? Especially from the baby boomer leaders. Very often you just kind of have this kind of, because the old church of old is very hierarchical. It's what we say, this is how it goes. Doesn't leave much room for reason, right? Okay, but you told us education was a good thing, so I'm over here getting all this education. But then when I come over here, I'm not supposed to think, like I'm not supposed to reason. I'm not supposed to discern, and I'm not talking about you have discernment by way of the spirit, but I'm not discern with my mind, right? And I just listened to something earlier. It's like, well, the Lord says, love him with all of your mind. That's one of the ways in which we love him. And so then how's information being presented so that people can actually wrestle with the concepts that are being presented to them, as opposed to just this by and by religion that worked for grandma and them, but that's not going to work for today when you live in information world, and I could get everything I want to, at my fingertips, and Google says something different than what the church folk talking about, or whatever Instagram influencer, they saying something different than whatever TikTok saying something different, Snapchat saying something different, YouTube saying something different, and then don't talk about all the streaming services. They all saying something different.
Right.
And so then that means not only is each platform saying something different, but that means because we have all these platforms today that you got mad competition.
Yeah.
You got mad competition. So then what are you saying that's actually relevant to my life that I think that I can't go get somewhere else because I have access to so much information, and because I have so much access to I think that I know.
Right. Now, do you think that is a big issue with a lot of the churches not embracing technology?
So I just think that many churches do, but then I do think that many churches are behind, and that was evident through our research and some of the things that I'm saying in terms of information technology relevant. These are some of the things that we've heard in our focus groups and things like that. So whereas, a lot of times people say, oh, this generation, they want to be entertained, and we're not going to turn our churches into tennis. And this generation, they don't even want to know, they don't want to come to church, all these things. Now, from our research, that is actually not true. It's not true. It's that some things that we've heard has been, they think we want these big productions, but we really don't. We want like pure worship. We don't want to be entertained. We want to know and experience and understand the presence of God. Or you have people say, or one of the biggest themes from our research is the desire for a conversational culture. This generation, they're looking for a relational dynamic. And so then these young folks don't want to listen. No, they want a relationship. You're right. They don't want to be told what to do. They don't want it to be because somebody said so. In fact, it's really less about what you say And it's more about how you're living out. So if you living like you ain't got no power, what about your Jesus for?
Right.
If you living and you down and out and you jiving and you shucking and you hypocritical and all these things, because that's one thing about the current generation, like they sniff out the bull like really quickly. And if you are inauthentic, they're not going for it.
They're not going for it.
So then that
You're
means
super right.
that we have work to do. Like the prior generations have work to do. I'm willing to have transparent conversations. So they're looking for some transparency. That doesn't mean you have to tell them all your business, but it does mean that you be willing to say, like, yeah, I struggle. Or yeah, it's been a struggle. Matter of fact, I was struggling yesterday, right? Like I might not be struggling today, but I was struggling yesterday, right? Are you willing to say things like that? And so it's just like, you didn't get there overnight. I don't know about you, but the Lord plucked me up out the club right before I went to seminary school.
Right.
So like, are you willing to even say that, as opposed to like, oh, I got saved and me and Jesus, we tight and it's just what it is. Like, that's not true.
That is not. That is not. And that is I think that just the perils of it. And then the fact that and I want to be clear that while they want authenticity and they want to see people walk it out, I want people to not misconstrue your words as to thinking that they want to see perfection. They want to see people being real about their walk and the struggles of it. And I have to say that I really believe that's what God wanted me to have this conversation on, or have this show, have this conversation, and this very podcast, because just so we can be real about some of the stuff that seems to be taboo as far as spiritual conversations, because some stuff should not be off limits. And one thing that I've learned since talking to some millennials, and I'm not far removed from being a millennial myself, like you win the cut right there. I just turned 44 like 2 weeks ago. Like I had to look at the calendar, about 2 weeks ago, I turned 44. So as a Gen Xer, I'm like right in the middle of people who was, tired of church folks. And that's what it boils down to. A lot of people are just find church folks off-putting, and in church surroundings hypocritical. And I think that when we get real about the fact that we're all here because we all need Jesus, we can get more people to come seeking and be willing for a deeper relationship with him. And I know, like, with you taking on the calling to actually, I think, because essentially it's your job to teach old dogs new tricks, right? That's in your ministry. So walk me through the process that got you to the calling of being a bridge between the generations in church leadership. What did that look like for you? I'm very interested in callings, and I think people need to know what they look like.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And let me say this too before I forget, just going back, I mentioned conversational culture being a theme in our research. I also want to just add that life application, like they life skills, right? Like, why should young adults have to go outside of the church to be able to learn life skills, or how the word applies practically to their day-to-day life, to their struggles, etc. So I want to add that too. Now, this question you just asked me, that is a very profound question. I'll say this, I'm very clear about my purpose in life. And I know that my purpose in life is to help people identify their purpose and have clarity about identity in Christ. So that could look a lot of different ways. And because I'm clear about my purpose, like as life changes, as seasons, God shifts me and, moves me to different moments, just so on and so forth, or has moved me different assignments, the more I got clear about my purpose, the less I was tied to the function. So right now, my role as director at AACI, that's a function, right? Like in a different season, that function could look different. In the past, that function has looked like writing a book, or it's looked like facilitating like workshops for women and girls, or it looks like preaching sometimes, or sometimes it's teaching. And early on in my journey, that looked like blogging, right? The different ways that I communicate my faith, help people to get access to understand their identity in Christ, or what their purpose is. That even in those things,
Brandi, you were
I
breaking
just
up a little.
kind of
You were breaking up
tended
a little
to
bit,
have.
Brandi. Okay, there you go. You were breaking up a little bit. That was good
Can you hear
stuff.
me?
I didn't want people to miss that. Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
after blogging, kind of go into that, because that was good stuff.
Okay. So I was saying that even in that stage of it, say for example, if I was facilitating a event for women and girls, think of two instances. I'll use that. That's a perfect example. So at that time, who I am today was nowhere in sight. I don't even think I knew she existed. Okay. But at that time, though, I will say that I began to have a intergenerational dialogue. So, for example, I can think of two occasions where I went to minister to a group of women, and they had girls in the room as well. But like often, girls, kids go sit off, right? Like you go sit off at the key table, whatever. And I can remember on both occasions being like, okay, I need us to do something before I move forward. I need you guys to come get in and sit in among the women. And I think that maybe for me, I'm wondering now that I'm talking about it, because I'm wondering if that was there for me, because at 30, I remember God telling me that I was a Titus 2 woman, and there I was being 30 thinking, I'm like, well, wait a minute, I'm still young. Like, Titus 2 be talking about the older women and the younger women, like I ain't no old woman. But I'm old enough I was old enough to offer something to some other young woman, and I think that's what we have to think about. So as I attain things, as I grow, et cetera, it's not for me. It's not solely for me. Like I get to enjoy the benefits and reap the benefits of my hard work and things like that, but it is not at all just for me.
Right.
So then who is it for? What is it for? And so I think likewise, even in my work with church leadership, that's the same question. Because I think it's all a matter of legacy. And sometimes, we can say, we help churches grow, or we help, revitalize churches, or we help churches create more significant outreach impact. We can say all those things, but at the end of the day, I think it's really about legacy. Legacy is not legacy. There's more than one way to build wealth. I'll say that. Okay. So it's just like, it's really about legacy. And so I think a lot of times what happens with churches is that, especially for these churches that are dying, you've built a monument. You have not built something that can live on and that can be passed down, that embraces innovation and integration and all those things.
Wow.
But in order for those things to go on, intergenerational leadership, intergenerational relationships, intergenerational dialogue, all of that has to be at play.
It's so many people that just are against church growth, and it's not always church leaders. It's not even always church parishioners. It's people that just feel like if a church is growing or too innovative or too progressive, it's gotta be bad. So what would you say to those people?
I mean, what comes to mind when you ask me that is just like, then what are we talking about? If we talking about being like because anything that's not growing is dead. You just that's life 101. Like anything that's growing is dead.
If you're not growing, you're dying.
Or it's not growing, right?
If you're not growing, you're dying. Oh,
Yeah.
beautifully
So,
put.
in terms of how I got here, I guess with you asking me that question, I've always had a heart. I myself have always had a heart for youth. You know, at one point I was a job readiness facilitator in for a profit, and at that time I was within 15 Chicago public schools and with hundreds of girls on a regular basis. And you know, they keep you on where I learned how to love unconditionally. And so and how I learned to connect is one in which I learned to connect with younger people and things like that. And it's where I learned that they do want your attention. They do want your input. And not just young ladies, young men too, because in other work that I've done, the young men are especially thirsty for like the love and approval of women in their lives. You know, people always talk about absent fathers and things like that. No, these boys are lacking motherly love and wisdom as well.
Yes.
And so, once again, you know, so I'm saying, you asked me how I got to be the bitch. I just think some of those life experiences equips me to be the bridge. But then I just think, when I think about in terms of being able to empathize or understand or be patient with folks who are older than me, you know, I'm very close to my grandmother. So, you know, I think that lends itself in terms of my ability to appeal or to relate to, or to even, quite honestly, just be charismatic to be able to be among older leaders, or just kind of have a way with older leaders. So I think that's as well on both sides. And I think it's a role that I am, right? Like, so my grandma, she's 87, but like I'm the oldest grandchild, but I was the only grandchild for 14 years. So after me, my younger cousins are 27, two of them are 25. My younger sister is 19, right? Like it's a 20 gap between my sister and I.
So how old is your sister?
She's 19.
19. Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I am a bridge, right? And think about the fact my mom is a baby boomer. So, and she's a boomer, and my sister is a Gen Z, and I don't know what's going on there, right? And so then I have to step in a lot of times to
and bridge the generations.
And it shows up in my personal life, you know, in a very intimate way. And so I just think that this generation is very hungry. I think that that it will take people like myself, people like yourself, to be the bridge, right? Almost serving as cultural interpreters, if you will. Now, don't get it twisted. Like, yeah, I've done research. We've done research. But, you know, let my little sister tell it. I'm thinking, you know, all this time I'm thinking I'm the cool big sister. And she told me that I'm definitely giving second mom vibes. So it's just like,
oh yeah, I definitely get it.
I'm not even as young and cool as I think I would like, you know, as I would like to be. This is authentically who I am. But just for example, you know, I mean, Listen, I graduated from high school in 2000. So what the music of my era is Juvenile taking over for the 99 and the 2000, right?
Right.
So Juvenile, you know, he's making a comeback, had his little Tiny Desk concert, and he been on the concert circuit and everything. I found out my younger cousins who are 27 and 25 didn't even know who Juvenile was. And I said, now wait a minute, like
You don't
it,
know Juvenile? You ain't turning to that person. Oh yeah, you second mind vibes all day.
I was like, oh my God, I didn't even, but when you think about it, I'm like, they were 2 and 4 years old. Why would they know who Juvenile is?
Right.
I
Right.
just say that to say that we're having totally different conversations. We listen to totally different music, right? There's so many different things. And so, you know, anyway, I mean, every generation has that gap, but that was that moment for me, like, yeah, definitely giving mom auntie vibes.
And you know, it's so, and one thing that I have come to appreciate the more I have been growing into my kingdom community. I was one of those people, just to give a little background about myself, like I went to church for years. You know, you're a Midwest girl, I'm a Midwest girl, I'm from Detroit, right? And so born and raised in Detroit, and I grew up going to church. You just knew that that was something you had to do, you know? And so I grew up going to church, went to church for years, but it wasn't until I got into my mid 30s where I understood the importance of relationship. And that's when I started on that path, which ultimately led me where I am and where I'm going, right? But
Yeah.
what I'm understanding about the process of it all, getting it as I'm growing more in community with church, being in the small groups and stuff like that, I'm appreciating the multi-generational opportunities that I'm able to partake in. Because a lot of times, back in the day, being in the old Baptist church, you had some cool older ladies, some of those mothers, some of them talk to you more than 2 or 3 minutes at a time. Some of them was real cool, some of them was kind of mean, and you just knew to stay away from them. So, same, it's like some of them old people is like you knew them, they over there, they old, they wise, they mothers or whatever the situation was. But now I'm in a situation where I'm in life groups with people from who are from the silent generation, who are baby boomers. And me as a Gen Xer, and then I'm also have millennials in there, and I see the advantages of it. And I feel like as we evangelize and try to get people to come to the church, then so that they can appreciate the benefits of the multi generations in this cradle of faith. You know what I'm saying? What it can do for us, our personal, professional, and spiritual lives, like the advantages of it, right? And so, what would you say to the person who feels that they don't need to be in the church to have a relationship with God?
Mhm. Um, so I think I'll start by saying this.
Mhm.
Well, let me say this first. Church and church community are important. 100%.
Mhm.
Now, I don't necessarily believe that getting them to church has to be the starting point.
Mhm.
I think that for the times that we live in, I think that church, and I would rather, so that's generally what has been the focus: church membership, church attendance. I would say that the greater offering that we have is community.
Yes.
That's really what the goal should be.
Yes.
Now, one of the ways you attain is through church, right? But if church is a production or something you get them to, and it is the messages filled with antics and the people are mean or they judgy, those things, why do I want to go to church? Right? Like, think so something that we talk about oftentimes is on-ramp opportunities. And so, because churches, many churches, right, like churches have become so insular, where the focus is inward. And the purpose of pastors coming into our program is to reclaim and really restore an outward approach. So I personally, I don't jive with the get them to church kind of language. I think them coming to church or church attendance is a byproduct. I think the first thing is bringing them, is bridging them to Christ. And so when I say on-ramp opportunities, that means what are you doing as a church who should have a goal to evangelize and to disciple people? What type of outreach efforts are you creating? Because why are we always so consumed with trying to get them over here with us?
Yeah.
Jesus is always outside. You know, that's we outside, right? Like that's
we outside.
We outside. Like, you know, like where are you outside?
Right. That's so outside. True.
So, but what are they outside? What are they interested in doing? Like, what do they have need of? And so it's if you think about it, just like now, you know, put my business hat on or whatever, like when you think about business, you are effective when you have met the need of the people, not when you created something that you thought was so good that other people had to have, and then you got to convince them that they should have it. No, you should be presenting something in a way where you are so attuned, right? Because you done did your market research and you're so attuned with what it is that they need, what they desire, and then you package your product in a way that is appealing to them. So I think that that's where the church misses the mark, because we're so busy offering what we think folks should have instead of getting an understanding about what people actually need. So if I have an understanding about what people actually need, then I can create opportunities that serve people's needs.
Yes. I love that.
I can feed them and then I can feed them.
Yes.
Okay. So
I like it.
That's why I will. That's why the like get them to church, it makes me cringe. It really does.
I get, and you know, on your site, right? Something that on your website, something that kind of caught my eye, right? It says, you know, you help pastors improve conversion growth. And over the years, the word conversion has been classified kind of as a trigger word for certain groups, right? When it comes to the church, right? So can you explain your way of stamping out the stigma associated with that word and how important conversion is for the extension of the kingdom?
Yeah, so, and I would definitely say that conversion is more of an internal word, right? So, so I've been in my role as director 6 months. One of my goals for 2024 is to update how we communicate those things externally, right? It's no different than when we use churchy dialogue among ourselves and don't nobody else know what we're talking about. Right. It's the same thing. So conversion is much more of an internal word. Pastors understand. And so by that, what we're saying is conversion growth means that you've actually been doing work and outreach and, you know, creating opportunities for people to come to know Christ. So it's not necessarily because I'm trying to convert somebody from something else. Conversion in the sense of most churches today, and I don't have the stats in front of me, most churches grow today because folk be church hopping.
Because people be church hopping.
And swapping and, you know, that's how a lot of churches grow, because folk come from other churches because this church is the new hot church and then you go over there. But who's getting saved? If everybody walking down the aisle is getting rededicated, then are you really doing what?
So true.
Then are you really doing, is the church really being what the church is supposed to be? And so when we use the term conversion growth, we are talking about people coming to know Christ. Your church is growing with who are accepting Christ for the first time.
Right.
Not people who are just leaving another ministry because they bitter or hurt or that, and so on and so forth. But that's what we mean.
Oh, okay. Get that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for breaking that down. But
Yeah.
I can sit and talk to you all day, but I definitely want to invite you to come back because I like talking to you. I hope you have been enjoying this conversation. You definitely have a lot of insight when it comes to the kingdom, and you are an open book about it, which is what, like you said, people need to see more of for people that are walking with God. We need to stop acting as if we are, we don't have a past and that don't have current struggles, and that this walk is not easy. It's not, but it's worth it. Right. And so that's the important thing. So, I've definitely appreciated this. I appreciate your ministry. And I did want to ask you one last thing. What's the biggest dream you see for your ministry? And then, tell us how to let our listeners know, listeners know how they can learn more about your ministry, your website, things like that. And I'm definitely going to put your Cash App up if anybody wants to contribute for you.
Yeah. So let me say this. The African American Church Evangelism Institute is only 2 years old. So right now, our focus is to work with 150 churches and pastors by 2025. That's our immediate goal. Other than that, and that's by enrolling pastors in our 2-year cohort program, senior pastors into our 2-year cohort program. Aside from that, just given the research that we do and have done, I really do see us growing our presence and our visibility by having conversations similar and even more expansive than the one that you do, right? Like the conversation you attended is like, that's us just getting started,
Mm-hmm.
And so for that to be expansive, and so for us to be associated with helping churches grow younger, helping churches become more effective in their intergenerational practices. Excuse me, that sounds like a fancy word, but intergenerational leadership is just your ability and willingness to listen, ability to advocate for others. In leadership, you hear the I do, what is it? I do, we do, you do, right? So that's the way in which you pass the baton, right? You observe me doing it, then we do it together, and then I pass it on to you. Things like that in order to bridge that, that the health and vitality of churches can continue to grow. And then other than that, like right now, I'm working on some curriculum, some called Growing Younger, that kind of help of what I've shared with you here today, but in a way that makes it palatable and practical, so that pastors program actually tangible action plans and things like that they can implement. So that's a work in progress with.
You're kind of breaking up there. Can you hear me? Okay.
What's the last thing you heard me say?
Building a curriculum to help congregations grow younger.
Yeah. So that's where we are. And that's what I and that's what I see us, focusing on, and that's what I see us building our reputation around.
Awesome. And then your other business where you help faith-based businesses. What if somebody
Yeah,
needed your
so
help, how could you help with stuff like that?
yeah, so actually, this fall, beginning October 14th, I'm offering a 6-week group coaching opportunity for women
Hmm.
who know that God has called you, has been nudging you to start or improve your ministry or faith-based business.
Hmm.
Um, and so that program is called Launch with Clarity. And so that starts in October. And so that's one of the ways in which I'm working with faith-based folks at this time. Yep. And
Awesome.
so yeah, so I for that, so I'm trying to think. My Instagram handle is Brandi Nicole Leads. So Brandi with an I, Brandi Nicole Leads. So that's one way to get in touch with me. And then my personal email address is Brandi, Brandi, at Go Be the Light. It's go the letter B, the light.com. Go Be the Light. My website is also gobethelight.com. And then for the work that I do with the Institute, you can find us at africanamericanchurch.org.
Awesome. Well, okay. Well, AfricanAmericanChurch.org. Yes,
Mhm.
that sums it up. Y'all got a good one. Y'all got a good website.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Well, thank you so much, Brandi, for sharing your insight and your expertise with us and your perspective. It is truly valuable. I thank you so much for sharing your Christian walk with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Did you have any final words before that you wanted to say, or before we go ahead and sign off here?
Um, just be authentic to who you are. And it's an audience of one, right? Like it's God, it's not what all the other people think. And it is about relationship. I know you mentioned that earlier. It is about relationship above all else. And I think everything else is a byproduct.
Amen. Amen. Well, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much to my guest, Brandi Williams, for joining the conversation today, for sharing your Christian walk with us, and for sharing your kingdom mission. I wish you great success in all that you do, being the voice of multiple generations. And if this conversation spoke to you, please like it, share it, comment. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Remember, you can also stream our podcast online at iHeartRadio or Apple Podcasts, as well as thischristianwalk.com. Now, TCW fam, this was a great conversation. And I think that the best nugget that we can get from this conversation about the generations is this. Just because the method changes doesn't mean that the message is going to change. The message is still the truth. The truth is still this, that no matter what your generation, God has a perfect plan for you. And you can trust him, you can trust the process, and you can trust that knowing whatever the worship experience is, that as long as he is in the midst, you are in the right place. And on this walk with God, I know one thing for sure. Loving God can be easy. Trusting God can be hard. But I believe we can all get there one step at a time on this Christian walk. See you next time.
We ain't talked in a minute, yo, please come kick it with me. I got some questions, need answers, so please be vivid with me. This walk is scary, I know that results may vary, but somebody gotta do it. Sit down, let's get into it.